Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Women and Money Montreal. My name is Lynn Sock, and today's topic is going to be reviewing your financial planning checklist. So I'm just going to warn you ahead of time that I'm not going to share anything earth-shattering. All the items that I'm going to list and everything that I'm going to talk about is all stuff you probably already know. So let's get right into it. So I'm going to break down the checklist into 7 items. If you go online and search yourself financial planning checklist, you'll find many versions of what I'm going to tell you. They all pretty much say the same thing. So just for the purpose of today's video, I'm going to break it down to 7 items. Some of these items may apply to you, some of them might not. The whole purpose is it's a checklist. So whatever applies to you, you put a circle around it, and whatever doesn't apply, you put a check mark or you cross it out. So let's start with number 1. Number 1, the first item in a proper financial planning checklist is a list of your financial goals. So what are you planning for? What do you want to do? What's a priority? What's not a priority? And when I say write down your financial goals, you could break it down into 3 sections. Number 1, your short-term goals. Short-term goals are, generally speaking, anything you want to accomplish in about less than a year. Then second are your medium-term goals. What would you like to accomplish in the next 3 to 5 years? Third are long-term goals. Long-term goals are any goals that you have beyond 5 to 7-ish years. It's very important, and sometimes it's hard for people to wrap their heads around this, but your financial goals should be somewhat flexible. They should be somewhat flexible because A, stuff happens in life, B, you never know how the economy is going to be, and C, you just don't know, right? So when you're reviewing your financial planning checklist and you're writing down your financial goals, make sure that your goals are somewhat flexible, just in case something happens. Okay, so number 1, write down your financial goals. Number 2, debt management. If you have debt and you don't know how to pay it back, or you're kind of just paying the minimum payments and maybe a little bit more, or making payments here and there, it's a good idea to have a debt management plan. So if you have a personal loan, a car loan, it's pretty simple. You owe this amount of money over this amount of time. But what happens if you have a line of credit or if you have credit card debt? So there's a very useful calculator on a website called dinkytown.net. And if you go to that website, you can actually create your own debt management plan. So look up your line of credit calculator, or you look up your credit card payoff calculator, plug in how much you owe, plug in the interest rate, and plug in how long you would like to, when would you like this paid off? And it will tell you how much you need to set aside a month or how much you need to pay a month in order to pay it off in time. What's useful about this calculator is that you might have in your head that you want to pay off your credit card in 24 months. With this calculator, it'll tell you how much you need to pay every month for the next 24 months to pay it off in 24 months. But when you see the number, you might say to yourself, oh, it's a lot of money. I'm not able to come up with that. And you'll have no choice but to adjust your goals and adjust your plan so that you pay it off in 36 months. Because even though paying back your debts is a priority for you, you still need to live, and you still need to take into account that things might happen in life. So go to the website, dinkytown.net, choose Canadian calculators. There's a calculator for credit card payoff, and there's one for line of credit. Very important. Third, budget and cash flow planning. So nobody likes the word budget. I'm going to use the word budget just because I haven't come up with a better word than that. What's the purpose of a budget? It's to just see where your money is going, right? You want to know money in, money out. And the whole point is not to micromanage where every penny or every dollar is going. It's to get to know what your spending habits are. I'll speak for myself, how I keep track of my budget. I'm very old school. It's pen and paper. I have the same routine every morning. I get up, make a cup of coffee. I sit down with my husband. We turn on the news, and we go over what our money situation was the day before. How much money came in, how much money went out. And we categorize everything. So we know by the end of the year how much money we spent on groceries? How much money did we spend on entertainment? How much money did we spend on gas? How much money did we spend on utilities? So we have a general idea of how much we're spending, because if you don't keep track, you're never going to know. And again, it's not about micromanaging. It's asking yourself at the end of the year, when you keep track of your expenditures, is this how you want to spend your money? And if you don't keep track, you're not going to know. And this applies to anybody. I don't care if you're making $40,000 a year or if you're making $140,000 a year. It applies to everybody. I know people who make $40,000 a year and they're living way below their means. And I know people who make $140,000 a year who are living paycheck to paycheck and credit card to credit card. So make sure you keep track of your budget and your cash flow. Number 4, your emergency funds and investment review. If you currently have investments, how are your investments doing? The stock market has done very well this year compared to last year. So you might want to take a look at your July statement and see, what were my returns this year? If you really didn't have returns, ask why. Sit down with your financial advisor. Maybe there's something that you could do in terms of the investment fund choices or to change your portfolio. Emergency funds. So I have a little bit of a beef with emergency funds. My beef is 2 things. Number 1, I see too many people with too much money in an emergency fund, just sitting there idly for a long period of time. And number 2, it's usually not invested. So oftentimes I'll have clients who have $10,000 in a savings account that they've had sitting in there for 5 years, 10 years. The interest rate on that savings account is 0.001%, so it's not growing. Well, guess what? While your emergency fund is sitting there in that savings account, the cost of living and the cost of everything has gone up. What I try to teach my clients and what I try to teach my women in the group is to kind of get away from emergency funds. Maybe start off as having an emergency fund, but eventually you want your money to work for you. So eventually you're going to want to take part of that emergency fund and start investing it. So it's going to grow. And you'll see that that emergency fund that's not growing is going to start to shrink and shrink. Why? Because the rest of your money is growing. And that's what having your money work for you looks like. Number 5, retirement planning. So sometimes in life, you might not have any goals, but everybody's goal, no matter what your situation is to someday retire. So everybody, every single person should have some type of retirement plan and should be putting money away for their retirement. Why? Because you don't want to end up being that person who reaches retirement and you either A, don't have enough money to retire, or B, you take a huge pay cut when you reach retirement. So it's very important as soon as you can to put money aside and make sure you invest that money for retirement. Number 6, you want to take a look at your insurance coverages and your income protection. So you may have insurance through your work and you may have private insurance. You may have a combination of both. I've seen situations where people don't have enough insurance coverage, and if something were to happen to them, it's going to be horrible for the people they leave behind. I also see people who are overinsured. So you want to make sure that you take a look at the insurance coverages and make sure that you're covered adequately. And number 7, estate planning. What is estate planning? In very simple terms, estate planning is arranging and planning for the stuff, the money, the assets that you have to go to the person who's supposed to receive them once you pass away. You want to make sure the process is easy. You want to make sure it's transparent. You want to make sure it's quick. And you want to make sure it's as tax efficient as possible. And sometimes setting it up one way is going to cost a lot in taxes versus setting it up in another way, which will cost much less in taxes. And that's what estate planning is. So as long as you have stuff, you have money, you have assets, you have investments, you have real estate, whatever it is, when you have things to give to the next person in line, you want to make sure that it gets to them in the easiest way as possible. And for anybody who has ever had to settle an estate, it's hard, but it's even harder when everything is all over the place and not organized. So please, for the people that you're leaving behind, even if you're young, make sure that you have some kind of estate planning in order, so that whatever it is that you're passing off to your next of kin, to your beneficiary, they get it as efficiently as tax efficient as possible. I always say, what's the purpose of financial planning? The purpose of financial planning is to make sure that is to mitigate the risk for the things that are going to happen in life that you don't even know are going to happen. You want to make sure that you have money set aside just in case. You want to make sure that you have enough insurance coverage. You want to make sure that if something were to happen to you, that you're not leaving your loved ones in a situation where they don't have enough money, they don't know where anything is. It's costing them a lot of money out of pocket until your estate gets settled. So it's very important to plan your finances. It doesn't have to be that complicated for those who don't have a very complicated situation, or it could get extremely complicated. So these are the 7 items that should go in a financial planning checklist. Like I said, some of it may apply to you, some of it may not, but the point of the checklist is to go through it and to circle whatever's priority for you. And if you need to reach out, my contact information will be at the end. I'd be more than happy to assist you.